D-Lo 404 Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC. Shout out to Marlowe's Corner. You have to subscribe to Marlowe's Corner. Go over there and check them out. Also, shout out to World Breaker Fighting and the Cali Enigma Sports and Entertainment, I think is the name of the channel. Everybody knows who Cali Enigma is. I don't know what the full name is off the top of my head, but go subscribe to the Cali Enigma. It always goes live early in the mornings. I pretty much catch his live stream on my way to work in the mornings. But anyway, I want to talk about this morning. While I was on Cali's live stream, one of the subjects that he got into before he got off was that Luis Ortiz's team has said on Twitter that they're willing to take, any offer that Anthony Joshua and his team makes to get that fight made. Now, I'm sure any offer means anything within reason. I'm sure they're not going to take, $2,500, but, y'all get what I'm saying. With that said, we all know that Anthony Joshua mentioned Luis Ortiz's name about a month ago after the Dillian White and Derek Chisora fight. But we also know he kind of just sneezed his name out. It wasn't like he said it with authority or with any kind of oomph behind it. It was kind of like, he was saying these other guys' names with some authority, and then he kind of just like sneezed out Luis Ortiz. And the interviewer kind of caught it up. It was like, whoa, I never heard you say Luis Ortiz's name before. And then right after that, Anthony Joshua started talking about guys wanting too much money. So it was kind of like he mentioned him, and then as soon as he mentioned him, he basically just went ahead and said, yeah, he'll want too much money to fight. Well, Ortiz's team is saying that that's not going to be the case. Make us an offer. And as far as I know, no offers have come their way. I never hear Eddie Hearn mention Luis Ortiz as a possible opponent whatsoever. Even with Anthony Joshua talking about coming stateside for a fight, there's never any mention of Luis Ortiz. We know Luis Ortiz was supposed to fight AJ for that vacant, I think it was a vacant WBA belt, and he agreed to step aside and let Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko fight for that title. Joshua won the title. Luis Ortiz still the mandatory. The fight never got made. They were looking to make the IBF defense against Pulev, who wasn't ready to make that, wasn't ready for the fight. And then they eventually got a substitute for Pulev in the IBF rankings and fought Carlos Taka. So that left Luis Ortiz, on the outside looking in, still waiting on his shot with the WBA. And then, of course, Ortiz got an offer from Wilder to fight for the WBC title. He came up short. But prior to that, he failed a drug test for failing to disclose medication that he was taking, and the fight got scrapped. Wilder fought Stavern, then went back to fight Ortiz. But in the interim, the WBA dropped Ortiz from their rankings, thus dropping him from being the mandatory for the WBA. So in essence, the WBA saved AJ from having to fight Luis Ortiz, however you want to slice it. Just like the WBA stepped in and saved Joshua from Deontay Wilder when Deontay Wilder was willing to take the fight for $15 million. Back in, I think the fight would have been in September, and they fought Povetkin instead. So I just don't think there's any genuine interest from Anthony Joshua, Matchroom, Eddie Hearn to make any kind of fight with Luis Ortiz right now. Luis Ortiz doesn't look quite vulnerable enough for that fight to be made. And it just looks like whenever AJ did mention his name, he wasn't supposed to. And he was quickly corrected on that later, once he got back to talking to Eddie, because the fight hadn't came to fruition. The fight hadn't come close to coming to fruition as far as, anything that appears to be, anything made public. It hadn't seemed whatsoever that they interested in making that fight. Luis Ortiz still stands as the guy that no one seems have any interest of fighting for whatever reason. They always like to say he doesn't bring any money to the table and so forth and so on. Be that as it may, Wilder fought him. Wilder could have used that same excuse everybody else used. Wilder could have said, Luis Ortiz doesn't bring anything to the table, not gonna fight him. But when the opportunity presented itself, he gave Luis Ortiz a shot, not once but twice, and he took care of him. Eddie Hearn himself was one of the biggest critics of Deontay Wilder for taking that fight, basically saying that he's taking a serious risk at blowing the AJ fight. They're going out there taking a loss, and that takes a lot of luster away from the Anthony Joshua Deontay Wilder fight. So we know Matchroom respects Luis Ortiz's skill set, what he brings to the table, as far as a threat. Because if they didn't, they'd have been jumped on it, and they surely wouldn't have been worrying about him beating Wilder. But that said, things are as they are. Luis Ortiz and his team still have yet to receive an offer as far as we know. And they're still out there saying that, hey, we're out here, make us an offer, we'll give you a fight. So far that hasn't happened, so I don't expect to see Luis Ortiz's picture pop up as a potential opponent for AJ. I don't expect his name to come up in conversation as a potential opponent for AJ. And I expect Ortiz to have to continue fighting guys like Christian Hammer, Travis Kaufman, and such, because those are the guys who have the most to gain if they're able to beat a Luis Ortiz. Where these other guys, they can navigate around the heavyweight division, act as if Luis Ortiz doesn't exist, and no one's gonna hold their foot to the fire about it. But that's all I'm gonna say on the subject. Other than Matchroom still seems to be having a hard time making a deal with Dillian White, and maybe Gerald Miller's gonna end up being the better option for them. I don't know, but it remains to be seen. I'm keeping my eye to it, keeping my eyes on the situation, keeping my ear to YouTube, and watching what kind of articles are popping up on these boxing websites as it pertains to what's going to be next for Anthony Joshua and these other guys that are potentially waiting on that fight. Because the reality is, as long as they're waiting on that AJ fight, when I say these guys, I mean Dillian White and Miller, they're not gonna agree to fight anyone else because they're waiting on that fight. So they're waiting on to see who's gonna get the AJ fight. So in essence, it's kind of holding the division up a little bit, but we'll see what happens. Hey, shout out to the LDBC once again. It's D-Lo404 Boxing. Shout out to my subscribers who haven't subscribed to the channel. Ask you to subscribe, hit that bell icon. Hey, drop a comment in the comment section, hit that like button for me. I'm out. Peace.